Okay, let's try this again. Today we're going to start by clicking on this binary hero link that's presented. When you click on this, it should open up a scratch page, and you're just going to make sure that you're signed in. In this case, I am signed in. And then you just click Remix. Change the file name to your first name, last initial, and then binary hero. And then we'll just make this -1. Okay. Put the inside here. Okay, so we're going to discuss what the whole goal of this entire lesson is. Today we're going to create another game. This game today is going to be a lot like Guitar Hero. I don't know if any of you guys have played it, or if that's even a game that's anybody even plays anymore. I don't even know that it's out on like new systems or even like PS4 or any of that, but I remember playing it back on the PS3, I think it was, and I love that game. Anyhow, today we're going to get used to creating a game that flows like a normal game would. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to define a key to make up each one of these. And so the whole point of the game is that things are going to be flowing down the screen, and those are going to act as notes, and you have to hit the note whenever it comes down to your circle. The way that we're going to do this is we are going to first start by clicking on the sprite 1, and now we're going to make it so that the costume changes whenever we press the V key. You can tell that it's going to be the V key because I have this little V under where the 1 is on this side. If I go into costumes, I can see that there's two different costumes. I have an off and an on. And so when it's off, it's going to be white, and when it's on, it turns yellow. So the first aspect of this is going to be switching the costume so that it lights up whenever I hit it correctly. As with most of our projects, the event that would start this whole thing would be when the green flag gets clicked. So that as soon as the person starts the game, they're clicking the green flag and our program or our game is going to start. When the green flag is clicked, we're going to want that costume to switch. And so we want it to switch at a specific time. We want it to switch any time that you push the V button. But we don't want it to just happen once. We want it to happen over and over again. So we're going to drop a forever loop. Now, if the number or the V button is pressed, then it's going to switch to the yellow costume or the on costume. And if the V button is not pressed, then it's going to stay with the regular off or the one that we have here, right? So because of that, if I'm already saying it's an if, and then something else is going to happen. So if I do something, or if I push the V button, then I want it to switch to on. If I'm not pushing the V button, I want it to be off. So that tells me that it's not just going to be an if-then. If I just did an if-then, it would be if the V button is pushed, then it's going to be on. But this is going to be an if-then else. So if I drop that in the forever loop, if the, and then it's going to be the V button is pressed, let's change this to V. Then what happens it switches the costume to on. Else, or in other words, if I'm doing anything else, it's going to switch the costume to off. Now whenever I press the green flag, you'll notice that if I push the V button, this lights up yellow. As soon as I let go, it goes back to playing. Hold the V button, stays yellow. This is exactly what we want to happen. Okay. So now we have 1 out of the 4 coded. We have to go through and do the same thing for all the other codes, or for all the other sprites. So instead of coding it all again, it's all going to be almost exactly the same as this one is. There's going to be a slight difference in that it's going to change to button push. So I'm just going to drag this code out to each one of these. Again, whenever you get to it, you'll see that it like wiggles, and you drop it, and that means it's in there. Same thing there. And then I'm going to do it for this one as well. So now if I look at my costumes, costume for 2 is going to be the same. All I have to do is change this to C, so that if I push the C button, that's when we'd switch that costume to on. And I can test that. Push the C button, 2 lights up. Push the V button, so now all 3 of them light up, but we're going to switch that. Go to number 4. 4, the key associated with that is X. So let's switch that to X. And go to number 8. And I'm going to switch that to Z. So now whenever I press Z, that should light up. X lights up the next one, C, and then V. So now this is kind of like when you're playing Guitar Hero. If you press the proper key, it lights up the right one. All right, so for the next step of this, we want to make this so that we can use the different combinations to play different notes for each one. So each of the keys is either on when it's pressed or off when it's not pressed. That means that we can think of each combination of keys as a binary number. So a binary number is just it's a number that is going to be usually like 0 or 1. And that happens with computer programming a lot because we actually only work on a binary number system, which means that it doesn't go up to 10. It starts at 0 and goes to 1 and then flips back to 0. So if I was talking about a number like 3, it would go 0, 1, then back to 0, so it would make it 10, and then up again. So it's a hard concept to understand, especially at this early phase. But basically, as we're talking about binary numbers just means that there's 2 different options. Okay, so if I'm moving from left to right, or looking at this, if I add up the number of keys that are pressed, we can figure out what the value of each note is. So if I go 1, 2, 4, 8, 1, if I double that, I get 2. If I double 2, I get 4. If I double 4, I get 8. So that really, if I'm thinking of 1 would just be the V button pressed. 2 would be just the C button pressed. If I wanted to do 3 would be C and V pressed at the same time. 4 would just be X. 5 would be 4 and 1 pressed. Think about 6, that would be 4 and 2. 7 would be 4, 2, and 1. 8 would just be Z. 9 would be 8 and 1. And then if I wanted to do 10, I would do 8 and 2. If I wanted to go 11, 8, 2, and 1. 12, 8, and 4. 13 would be 8, 4, and 1 in order to get up to 13. And so there's a ton of different combinations, or there's a bunch of different combinations that I can push to play different notes. So that if I'm pushing 1 and 2, that would be 1 note. If I'm pushing 2 and 4, that would be 1 note. Additionally, I could just press 1 button, and that would be 1 note. In order to figure out how many different combinations we have, we could just look at what it would be. Each one of these only has 2 options, off or on. So that would be 2 different choices. And then I would do 2 to the 4th power because there are 4 different buttons pushed here. So 2 to the 4th tells me that there are 16 different combinations of pressing the 4 keys. Because there's 16 different combinations, that means that we could play 15 different notes. The reason we can only play 15 different notes is because if I'm not pressing any button at all, that's also a combination. All right, so we want to make it so that we can create a new variable so that I can have all of these different combinations represented. And so whenever I create a new variable, I'm going to make a variable. We're going to call that variable note. And by doing note and for all sprites, it means that it's going to work for each one of these. So whenever I click on the different sprite, I should still see note as a variable. Now you notice whenever I created that, I had the option to make that just work for one of them. In some cases, it'll be necessary to have it only work for one sprite, but in this case, we're going to have it work for all of them. Okay, so now we're going to add this to the stage. So when I click on the stage now, I can create a code so that it will give me a value of the note for each one of these. So that if I'm pushing 2 and 1, that'll give me the value 3. And I can drag this note down to anywhere. I can also make it so that it doesn't say note. Simply by unclicking the box, I can make that disappear. So I'm just going to leave it in there. And then if you right click on it, you see it says normal readout. That's how it was with note. If I right click, I can change that to large readout, and that'll give me just the number for the note. So now we need to create this code within our stage so that we can make this work. And so in order to do this, I'm going to do when the green flag is clicked, which tells it from the very start, we're going to make it do this. Then we're going to drop a forever link in, or a forever loop, saying this is going to happen every time. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to have happen is that every time that it starts, it should set the note to 0. So that if I'm not pushing anything, it's at 0. Then I will put some different codes in. We're going to drop some if-then statements in. And we'll start with our first one that we did, which was V. So that if V is pressed, so sensing, if the key V is pressed, then what happens? Then we're going to want to switch our note to 1, because that's the number associated with V. Then we can drop our next if-then statement in and say if the C button is pressed, then it will change by 2. And then we might as well finish out our controls. I'll drop those if-thens in. And I'm going to have to do it for the next 2. This X and this Z. And then drop my variables in and change those values. This one would change note by 4. And this one would change it by 8. So now if I push any of these buttons, you'll see that my note changes. If I push Z, it's 8, X makes it 4, C makes it 2, and V makes it 1. If I push a combination, 1 and 8, that's telling it that it's changing the note by 1 and by 8, so that gives it 9. And so I could run through every value, push, like doing C and V gives me 3, or it's just X. And this is kind of what I was talking about a little earlier, so that we can get through all these different combinations up until we get to 15. If I needed to do 15, that would be Z, X, C, and V. If I needed to get 14, Z, X, C, 13, Z, X, V. And so now, as I'm trying to hit specific notes, it requires me to push different buttons. Each number in our combinations is standing for a different note. Okay, that's a good place to stop for today. Tomorrow we will pick up. Obviously, because today is Tuesday, you don't have an assignment today. I may be missing work tomorrow. So there's a good chance I'm missing work tomorrow. So if that's the case, then tomorrow's assignment is just going to be to complete what we've done so far, and then we will pick up from there when I get back. All right, have a good day.